So, just any questions to open? We open it out for Q&A. Just, well, to start off with, at what point did you decide or realize that you were going to perform all the roles yourself in your work? And, or why, really?
Wow. Actually, I did some early Super 8 work where I did something in front of the camera, but I think it was the first piece was in '91, and I always had this. I mean, I always had this idea to perform from. Like even in my childhood, we replayed like what we've seen on TV and like different characters in kindergarten, like Star Trek and all that. But it was important for me to do something a narrative with all the same. I mean, to use the characters as template. I mean, if I do everything myself, there is no difference. There is no personality because if you have actors, it's always the personality of a different actor. At that time, it's really the personality of the appropriated sound, and the it just works like as a embodiment of a voice. As in parapsychology, you have the medium. The medium channels the voice from somewhere else, and so that's a bit the idea behind. And I love doing that. I mean, that was one of the main reasons, because to have this, because when I always start with the sound editing, like everything happens in the sound editing in the beginning, and then I create my character just by the voice. Yeah, maybe it's an answer.
Very good point. Because, I mean, it brings back, of course, the nature of the power of an image, but, like, how we also isolate that power within certain iconic individuals, which you are both utilizing and separating from. Questions yet from the crowd?
I'm wondering, what is it that attracts you about, or your use of repetition? What is it about repetition that attracts you?
We have two different kinds of repetition. I mean, one is repetition in language, because language changes when you start to repeat. I mean, then you take it out of this original flow of the context, and you bring it back to the word and to the meaning, and it's not a natural flow of communication anymore. So that is one thing, and in general with repetition, and you. Like in all of the work, like the oral thing, there is a lot of repetition. It's really part of the media and oral thing, the oral thing, because it repeats all over, like what you have on mass media all the time, the whole day long, like with jingles and radio, with everything on TV. It repeats like commercials. It repeats. This is part of this whole mass culture. We live in a world of repetition all the time, and by repetition, it burns these even like sound. When you repeat one sound, they have in one of the very early pieces, Das Zauberglas, the magic glass. I have even there is a bird in the background that repeats all the time the same, because that is really not natural. If a bird like repeats exactly the same thing, so it gets really burned in your brain. And the other thing is with repetition, like how our brain works with memory. When you remember things, you have, especially with a certain trauma or something, you always go back in this point, and it always repeats, and there are little changes. So there is with in the meadow, there are some little changes when Jimmy gets out of the car. Sometimes there is a shot up to the woods, to the trees, and sometimes it's not. But the same. So there is always a little change, and so the same thing with. I mean, when I showed the meadow the first time when it was made, it was playing with this. I mean, that always also leads back to this afternoon, like showing video in a gallery as the so-called loop format, and exactly playing with that. That like someone goes in, sees like it's 28 minutes long, so each episode is 7 minutes, and watches an episode and then thinks, oh, now it starts to repeat. Probably okay. And then no, it doesn't repeat. So what is new? What is repetition? So there are many different, and our whole life is repetition, and music plays with repetition as well.
So that is an ongoing tension you want to set up with in the expectations of your viewer, let's say.
Yes.
Because back to that gallery discussion and presentation, of course, you always run the risk of the person sees the start of the second thing and they decide to leave. I mean, that's always the risk in a gallery as well. I mean, it's the risk in single channel setting as well.
It was a strange thing was that people really stayed, and even stayed longer, and then until the point where they realized, okay, now finally it repeats. But I was surprised. It was also a test, and I was even more surprised when I was asked to, because in the beginning it was just done for this, and I was asked to do a version and to show it in Oberhausen at the International at the Film Festival, and it was quite well received. And then after this, it was even bought, what I mentioned before, it was bought by TV, and that was the most surprising thing for me, that they want to show something like that. But it happened to me that I watched, by a coincidence, I was in France, and like switched like late night, 3 o'clock in the morning on a hotel room, like just through the news and all the other channels, and after a party, and suddenly I saw the meadow. Being in a hotel room, 3 o'clock in the morning, it worked really quite well. I couldn't believe it. It really worked on TV, and so it is. It's so interesting, like how where do you place things, and how, and it works completely different if you with the expectation, like you have a totally different expectation in the gallery space when you look at something like that than when you watch it on TV. And of course, I'm always playing with the expectation of the viewer, and there's always a direct connection to it. Sometimes even the characters talk to the viewer, like when we think back in Artist Center Drive, there's always in I think all of the work is a little moment when one of the characters addresses the viewer as well.
So there are moments when you, like for instance the driver and the two guys in the dark glasses and Meadow, where I mean the costuming and the cutting and everything it's very convincing, as far as it looks like a scene from a movie, and the reverse shot is all done very carefully, and all the looks are timed perfectly. And then there are other parts where it's completely unbelievable. I mean, you seem to be emphasizing how especially the female characters. Not for a moment. I mean, are you deliberately trying to like do two different things there?